In this video, we'll discuss about hereditary diseases and acquired diseases. Hereditary diseases are passed on from previous generations through genes. That's basically passed on through your DNA. Hereditary diseases are inherited from ancestors by the individual, whereas acquired diseases are picked up during the lifetime of the person. There are a few different types of acquired diseases on the basis of how they are acquired. And I'll go through each of those types right now. The first type of acquired disease is infectious diseases. Diseases that are passed on through infections due to viruses, bacteria, these are called infectious diseases like common cold and typhoid, right? There are some other diseases which are contracted due to lifestyle issues. For example, a person who lives a very sedentary lifestyle and eats an unhealthy diet could contract something like fatty liver or obesity, right? Another way someone might get an acquired disease is due to environmental exposure. Excess exposure to UV rays could cause skin cancer, or maybe excess exposure to polluted air could cause asthma, right? The last type of acquired disease is contracted due to aging. For example, cataract occurs over time due to old age. Great. Let's get back to hereditary diseases and discuss a few examples of hereditary diseases. Thalassemia is an example of a hereditary disease that's passed on from generation to generation. Thalassemia causes an issue with the production of hemoglobin that further leads to a lot of issues. Another example is sickle cell disease or sickle cell anemia. In this disease, the shape of RBC cells changes and then they don't do their functions very well, and that causes a host of problems as well. Another example of hereditary diseases that's much less fatal is color blindness. People with color blindness have difficulty with determining the color of anything they see because of a shortage of certain color receptors in their retina. That's a part of their eye. You can go up and read about color blindness. It's pretty interesting. Color blindness ranges from people being able to see the world in black and white to people not being able to differentiate between two different colors, say red and green or blue and violet, stuff like that. Pretty interesting. I'd encourage you to go check it out. Okay, now we've actually put all the diseases into two boxes, hereditary and acquired, right? But what if I told you that there is a third category in this system of classification? And those are diseases which are both hereditary and acquired. Let me give you an example. Diabetes, I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. I'm sure you've heard that family history makes some people more susceptible to diabetes than others. So that kind of points in the direction of hereditary, right? But on the other hand, I'm sure you've also heard that a sedentary lifestyle and an unhealthy diet can also trigger diabetes. And this kind of points to diabetes being an acquired disease, right? Now, which is it? Is diabetes a hereditary disease or is it an acquired disease? Well, it's a mix of both. Both these factors play a role. If both conditions are fulfilled, then the risk adds up. Let's explore this with an example. So let's say we have Sadik and Aruna, both of these are siblings, and since they're siblings, they have the same family histories, and both don't have a family history of diabetes. Great. So both are clear of the hereditary component. Sadik lives a healthy lifestyle. He goes exercising every morning and he also tries to eat healthy on a regular basis. Whereas Aruna lives an unhealthy lifestyle. She doesn't exercise regularly and often resorts to eating a lot of junk food. Now, which of these two do you think is more susceptible to diabetes? Obviously, Aruna is at a higher risk of getting diabetes, right? In this example, we saw that when two people had the same family history, what determined whether they got diabetes was their unhealthy lifestyle, right? Okay, let's take another example. Let's say we have two siblings. Once again, Shilpa and Raj. And in this case, Shilpa and Raj both have a family history of diabetes. Obviously, because they're siblings, they have exactly the same family history, right? Shilpa lives a healthy lifestyle. She eats healthy and she goes jogging every morning. But Raj, on the other hand, lives an unhealthy lifestyle. He often eats a lot of junk food and does not exercise regularly. Among these two, who do you think has a greater risk of diabetes? Obviously, Raj has a higher risk of diabetes, right? Again, in this scenario, both had the same family history, but what caused Raj to have a higher risk was his unhealthy lifestyle. Great. Let's summarize all of this in a table. So, the two factors we picked were unhealthy lifestyle and family history of diabetes, right? Now, what we're going to do is going to list out all these four cases in an increasing order of risk. So, for people who do not live an unhealthy lifestyle, they are exercising, eating healthy, and who do not have a family history of diabetes, these people, like Sadik, are the safest, right? Next, we've got people who do not live an unhealthy lifestyle. They are constantly exercising, eating healthy, but they do have a family history of diabetes. These people, like Shilpa, have a little more risk than people like Sadik, right? Next, we've got Aruna. Aruna lives an unhealthy lifestyle but does not have a family history of diabetes. And last, we've got Raj, people like Raj who have an unhealthy lifestyle and have a family history of diabetes, right? It's kind of obvious that Raj would come last in this, right? And that means he has the greatest risk of contracting diabetes. Great. Now, I'd like to show you one thing before we move on. The two people who had the maximum risk of getting diabetes were Aruna and Raj, right? And what did they have in common? Both of them had an unhealthy lifestyle. And that is what made them highly susceptible to diabetes. Great. Let's now summarize this entire video. We discuss hereditary diseases, acquired diseases, and diseases which were a combination of hereditary and acquired, right? We discussed that hereditary diseases were inherited from ancestors, acquired diseases were contracted during one's lifetime, whereas the last category had both these factors playing a role, right? Let me display the examples of hereditary and acquired diseases on the screen. And now to the diseases which are a combination of hereditary and acquired diseases. We discussed diabetes, right? Let me discuss a few more examples. Hypertension or high BP is another example of a disease which is both hereditary and acquired. It has both the components. Similarly, quite a few heart diseases are also both hereditary and acquired, including certain cancers, which can be both hereditary and acquired. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.